But what's really going to happen is like gay people are going to get married. So what? Big deal. They're going to go and do their thing. And then when gay adoption happened, people said, oh, but they said, well, there's a lot of kids that need to be adopted. You know, there's not enough parents that want to adopt the kids. They said, do we want to have the kids be in the foster system and be parentless or in a household? People said, oh, okay. But then they started to do the surrogacy thing.
Surrogacy is the really nasty one.
And then it's like, okay. So imagine, I mean, every human being has to have a mother and a father. Every human being is sperm and an egg, which can only come from a male and a female. And every human being has to be carried in a womb, which only female has. So every man, woman has a biological mother and a father. But the gay people say, we're going to create a child through this Frankenstein method, basically with the intention of taking the kid from their mother. And the kid doesn't get a vote in that. I don't know about you. I love my mother. I love my birth mother.
It's just, you're so connected with her. She raises you like in her body. Like you're connected to him before you're born. People don't realize it's like for 9 months, you're part of your mother. So I think that's why they're so in tune with the baby when they come out, where the father just can't get that, we can't read their needs the way the mother can.
Exactly. And you know, so the idea that you would be deprived of a mother,
it's just, I couldn't imagine. You need a mother I need a father for discipline and teaching you life, but you need the mother for the nurturing and the love that the fathers, you know, can't give. I couldn't imagine having two gay dads and the teasing they'll get, the bullying. It's just, to me, it's just disgusting. And again, I didn't have a strong opinion on it first, but when I saw those videos, it was just like, it was wow. It was an instant, just like, wow, this is just demonic.
Yeah, it's unspeakably evil. You know, and that's where you really realize that is why this stuff is so evil, because it thwarts God's plan. And people don't like to hear that because not everybody's religious, but it's like we were designed a certain way. 2 men can't have kids. 2 women can't have kids. A man and a woman can have kids. And it turns out it's pretty important that the child, especially in the first 3 months, is raised by their mother. And you see what happens. Like a lot of people are pretty messed up because their parents get divorced or they go to daycare. It's a very important relationship. And so we see when you try to thwart that plan, you get all these externalities and people think they know better. They say, well, we were designed this way. It's obvious. Adam and Eve, Adam and Steve, like, you know, the male end and the female end. We all know biologically men and women are compatible. But people in this day and age, they say, well, we know better because the heart wants what the heart wants. You know, and a gay person says, well, you know, this is what I want from my life. So biology be damned. And look at where it ends up. Nothing ever good comes from it. And that's because it's the fruit of the poisonous tree. You know, and these are just basic principles. So the further and further you get away, and even, by the way, for the straight people, the same thing is true. Even for the people that are having promiscuous sex, that's where abortion comes from. What's an unplanned pregnancy? It's when people do a sexual act that produces a child with no intention of having a child or raising that child together. All abortions stem from non-marital sex.
Yeah.
And you know, so same thing with divorce. You know, these are people that get together and, you know, maybe it's non-committal. Maybe they do it because they just love each other. And then they mess up the lives of the kids forever. You know, the generation's lost. They get together, they split because they're not feeling it or whatever. They don't recognize the permanence and the sanctity of the sacrament. And then they split and the kid is, you know, like a ripple in a pond, they perpetuate that trauma even further. You know, then they're messed up and their kids are messed up. So it's really like, you know, things have gotten way too crazy. We got to get back to basics. We got to get back to a foundation. And the foundation is religion. It's common sense. You know, all this other stuff, the further we get from it, the more horrors we can see. And that's how people rationalize it. And I think in some sense, you know, like the Pete Buttigieg is the worst of all possibilities. You know, a lot of conservatives, they look at leftists and they look at the, you know, like some of these homosexuals that get taken down in the Biden admin, they're cross-dressers or they're pedophiles.
Disgusting, yeah.
And people think that's gross. And it's true. You know, the outright degeneracy is disgusting. But at least the degenerates know that it's a transgression. Yeah. They kind of relish it and they know it's evil and they're doing evil. And so it's a little bit more honest. And in that sense, there's something qualitatively different. When Pete Buttigieg or Guy Benson or Dave Rubin, these are gay men, they marry a guy, they create a child through surrogacy, they put on the college football sweatshirt, they go to the game, they go home, they get a dog, they raise their kids. And it's almost worse because it's like this inversion of what is holy and sacred. and they say this is normal. They're normalizing it. And it's almost worse to say there is no good and evil. Whether you're two guys married with a dog and a surrogate kid, or you're a man and a woman in a traditional marriage with a real kid, hey, we're all just families. Well, when you blur that line, because that's what the devil does. The devil doesn't come and say, hey, do evil. The devil comes in and says, well, there's no such thing as good and evil. Let's do what we want to do, and let's do what's best for us. That's always how the devil comes. You know, when the devil tempted Jesus, he didn't say, hey, let's be evil. He said, I'll give you all the power in the world. You know,
they offer you everything.
Right. You know, and even in Star Wars, you know, people say, how do you get Darth Vader? How does someone go and blow up a planet? I know this is, you know, maybe a little Reddit or whatever, but in that trilogy, they show how a person falls. They say, well, you know, good and evil is a point of view. Who's to say what's good and evil? You know, good and evil is how we rationalize power, or how we rationalize interest. And it's blurring the line. That's how they get you to surrogate children. That's how they get you to pedophilia. That's how they get you to these abortions,
Yep.
you know, these post-birth abortions. So, you know, for people that think they're too good for religion, it's like people need to really kind of rethink their assumptions.
Yeah, I know. I was like an atheist growing up and then switched to agnostic, and I definitely believe in God. I haven't switched to organized religion yet. It's possible I will. I mean, I'm looking at the religions. But yeah, no, personally, I badly partook in the hookup culture, and it's like one of those things, you know, sleeping around, but it's not rewarding. You just start feeling empty after a while. And I did have a kid young, and then, you know, we didn't get along with the mother, but luckily I wasn't never pro-abortion. I thought it should be legal, but for myself, I just couldn't. I couldn't get myself to kill my own child. Thank God, you know. Obviously, we talked about it, but thank God, I just couldn't go through with doing it. And you know, extremely close to my daughter, but it was terrible that I didn't raise her in a family together. I still feel so. That's one of the few things I feel totally guilty about in my life, that she didn't have a full-time father there. We're still close, but just not having the father 100% of the time. The whole child needs that. And it's just like, you are right about the family unit. They need both parents in the house, both parents taking. So when you split in these relationships, the kids going back and forth, it's so damaging for the child.
Yeah.
Well, I said, my daughter turned out great. We're close, but it's still, you know, for sure it hurt her.
Well, and you know, I can hear that you mean that sincerely, because you have a conscience. Even though you're not religious, you have a conscience, and you can see the way it's supposed to be, you know? And the sickest thing of all is when people go and encourage young people who don't know better that this is the way, and they have no idea the damage it causes. And that's the thing about the devil, is in the Bible, angel comes to the Virgin Mary or anybody, and they say, don't be afraid. Because when an angel comes, people are terrified, because they don't look like the angels we think of. They look like, you know, crazy things. And people are in awe of God's power. And the angel says, hey, it's cool. Don't, because in the immediacy, we're terrified. But as we get to know God, we get to love God. And we realize that, you know, and I don't want to sound like I'm giving like a big sermon or whatever, but this is true about the nature of good and evil. As we get to know God, we realize it's unconditional love. We realize, you know, we love God and we fear God. With the devil, it's the opposite. The devil comes to you and says, hey, man, you know, try a cigarette. Hey, man, let's smoke pot. Hey, let's have sex. Free love, man, feels good. What's wrong with love? You know, what's wrong with jerking off? Whatever. And then the devil says 20 years later, I got you. I got your soul. You know, when people are tempted, they fall further and further into it. They don't realize it's a false promise, and you're selling your soul. And so, you know, that's what's really sick about our society, is that, you know, people make their choices, whatever, but the media is inculcating the youth with this doctrine of sin. They're totally stealing their innocence, and it's basically not until it's too late. You know, the kid that gets hooked on heroin, the kid that loses his virginity, the kid that finds pornography at 12 years old, they have no idea what they're getting into.
The pornography thing's crazy, because when I was older, when I grew up much older, it was almost impossible to get pornography, so it wasn't an issue. Maybe I found a magazine once, you know, so it didn't like really damage my brain. Kids now have unlimited access to hardcore pornography. And I think it was Nico told me he started watching it at 11, and then I looked it up. The average age kids start watching pornography now is 11 years old.